Blacks in Technology.
Blacks in technology. Blacks in technology. Blacks in technology. Blacks in technology. Blacks in technology.
Welcome, everybody, to the 72nd episode of the Blacks in Technology Big Tech Talk podcast. I'm your tech tour guide for this evening, Greg Greenlee. If you are listening to this podcast for the first time, you can check us out at www.blacksintechnology.net. You can also check us out on the Twitters. We are at Black in Technology, and that's BLKTECHNOLOGY. We also have a Facebook group, so that's facebook.com/Blacks in Technology. And we also have a LinkedIn group under Blacks in Technology. And if you are on the Twitters right now, you have questions for our guests, you can tweet them using hashtag Big Tech Talk. That's BITTECHTALK, and we will certainly try to get your questions answered. Who is BIT? We are a tech-focused community and media organization, and we're focused on increasing diversity in technology. BIT always focuses on forming new partnerships and opportunities to assist our members with their continued professional growth and development. So if you want to partner with us, send us an email to partnerships@blacksintechnology.net. Any general inquiries, you can send us an email to contact us at blacksintechnology.net. And if you want to sponsor one of these extraordinary podcasts, send us an email to sponsorship@blacksintechnology.net. Blacks in Technology, we're proud to announce that we are partnered with the Self Conference, and we are the official diversity sponsors for the event happening in Detroit, Michigan, Motor City Casino, May 29th and 30th. Blacks in Technology will be in attendance there, and we will be holding a meetup. It will be a post-conference meetup, so it will probably be Saturday. It's on May 29th through the 30th, so that's a Friday and Saturday. And we will be holding a meetup after the conference. There are discounts for this conference, and they're available via our site. So if you check out our site and look for BIT Partners with Self-Conference page, you will find the link for the BIT discounts. Members of our community can get discounts on the conference admissions. We will also be holding a contest to give away a few free passes to that event. So stay tuned for that. That will most likely be in the next few weeks. We'll have details up on the site. We'll be tweeting it. We'll probably be sending an announcement through LinkedIn and everything. So if you are looking to attend a great conference in Detroit, Michigan, check us out. We'll try to make that happen. So Self-Conference is a mix of fantastic tech presentations and insightful soft talks in fabulous downtown Detroit. It's a whole 2 days at the end of May of mobile, web, hardware, software, process, and team talks to help you expand your knowledge, meet other technically minded folk, and immerse yourself in Detroit's tech renaissance. So that's definitely something to look forward to here at the end of May. We've also partnered with the organizers of the Closure West Conference, and that's happening April 20th through the 22nd in Portland, Oregon. And we are going to be giving away free pass tickets to that event. If you are interested in receiving a free pass, tweet us using the hashtag BIT_closure. And that's BIT_CLOJURE to enter your chance to win. Really, there's no other criteria to winning. Just tweet that, and you'll be entered to win a free pass to the Closure Conference. We're also providing discounts to that event as well, so check the site, and there is a link to get your discount there. I think it's just a bit. I think the actual page is just BIT Closure. So just look on our site. It's on the front page of our site. Click on that. There's a link in that article about our partnership with Closure West. And there's a link towards the end of that article for a discount. So we're going to be working with the Closure West organizers to either put on a lunch or dinner. So more to come on that by next week because the conference is very, very close, and we want to make sure you get all the details. What else is there going on? Oh, if you missed it, I was part of an incredible campaign with Verizon Wireless called the Potential of Us campaign. It's at verizonwireless.com/mobile-living /inside/potential-of-us. Check that out. It's a kind of a montage, a collection of a lot of technically minded people. I was one of the people chosen to be part of that campaign. There was also quite a few other people chosen. It's a real good campaign. Shout outs to Verizon for putting that whole thing together. But there's some great articles in there, some great insight into some things that people are doing in tech, Black people are doing, such as Kristen Rashawn of Divas and Dorks, Charles Hudson. He's a partner at SoftTech DC. We hope to get Charles on a podcast soon as well. But go check that out. There's a link and an article on our site. If you can't get the link, we'll try to put it in the show notes as well. But if you don't get it there, check out our site and you'll see an article there. So I want to welcome our guest to this podcast, Yolanda Conyers. Yolanda is the Vice President, Worldwide Functions, Human Resources, and Chief Diversity Officer at Lenovo, where she provides overall leadership to a global team of HR business partners. Let's see. She is also an author, best-selling author and speaker. And her book, The Lenovo Way, Managing a Diverse Global Company for Optimal Performance, is, I'm guessing it's in stores. You can probably get it on Amazon. It's probably a lot of places. We'll talk to Yolanda more about that. But a little bit into Yolanda's background before joining Lenovo. Yolanda spent 15 years in positions of increasing responsibility at Dell. She worked in product development, sales, human resources, and procurement functions, and ultimately rose to the company's executive ranks. Prior to working for Dell, she served as a system analyst at Texas Instruments. Yolanda received her bachelor's degree in computer science from Lamar University and an MBA in international business from Our Lady of the Lake University. She also completed the University of Michigan's Advanced Human Resource Executive Program, graduating in 2012. She's a notable speaker. She's been a keynote speaker at quite a few conferences and events. She also won quite a few awards: Black Engineer of the Year, National Society of Black Engineers, Woman of the Year in Science and Technology from YWCA, a National Award for Special Achievement, Woman of Color in Technology in 2005. She's also a member of NSBE, that's the National Society of Black Engineers. Yolanda is married, has 3 sons, and she lives in Austin, Texas. We were just talking about Austin, Texas. Welcome, Yolanda, to the show. Appreciate you taking time out of your night to join us.
Hi, Greg, and thanks for the warm introduction. It's a pleasure to be here, and I really appreciate this opportunity.
Oh, our pleasure. Definitely looking forward to this conversation and looking forward to your insights. So let's, without further ado, let's jump right into it. We're going to start with our most common question, or most common first question, and give us your background in technology. And even further than that, just your overall background. Like, where are you from? How did you get into tech? Where did you go to school, and how did you end up in tech? All that good stuff.
I love that question because I love to promote where I grew up. I am from Port Arthur, Texas. Greg, have you heard of Port Arthur? Do you know about Port Arthur?
Port Arthur, Texas. No, I don't think I have. You know what? This sounds like somebody famous is from there, besides you.
Yes, Janis Joplin, and then the famous rapper Bon B.
Oh, okay.
Right?
Oh.
So I'm from the big city of Port Arthur. Actually, it's today probably about 50,000 people.
Okay.
So I grew up there. I'm the youngest of 7 and the first in my family to receive an undergraduate and a master's degree. And I have to tell you, very early on, I was inspired by my father. My father was a seaman. He's deceased. He was a seaman, and he had an opportunity to travel around the world. So he worked on a merchant ship. He started in the galley of the ship as a sweeping boy and worked his way up to be the steward. I'm really proud of him and his accomplishments. He didn't have an opportunity to receive a formal education, but he traveled around the world, Greg, and he experienced so many different cultures. And he would return home And as a little girl, I was always anxious to see him and to connect with him after his long journeys. And it was three things he would always share with me. One was to get an education, two, to travel and see the world, experience the world, and third, to embrace the unfamiliar. And then I had a mother who, I'm the youngest of seven. While my father was off traveling around the world and providing for us, my mother took care of us. She got a part-time job, and my mother taught me to give back, to give to the community, to give to the church, and to help others. And so, I had a great foundation in terms of parents who promoted the importance of education. My mother went back to school to receive her GED after having a couple of kids, and then later went back and got a certification in child care technology and worked in the Port Arthur Independent School District. And so the two of them really stressed the importance of education. It was when I was in high school that one of my teachers recognized my knack for math and just for science, and he introduced me to computer science. His name was Mr. Lee. And so that's when I was first introduced to technology. I was a freshman in high school, and I stuck with it. They were offering in my high school, Thomas Jefferson. They offered computer science courses. I took that as an elective, and then by the time I graduated, I knew I wanted to be in the tech world, that I wanted to be a STEM student. And back then, I didn't really understand what STEM meant, right? But I went to Lamar University, and my freshman year met an amazing man, Dr. Price, my calculus teacher. I'll never forget him. And he introduced me to National Society of Black Engineers. And he said, Yolanda, I want you to attend one of the conferences. He said, it will open up your world. And I went, and I landed my first job with Texas Instruments as an intern. I did 3 semesters of internships, and upon graduation, they offered me a full-time position. So fast forward, I've spent over 25 years in high tech. I started with Texas Instruments. Then I worked for Dell for 15 years. I was the first African-American female engineer hired at Dell in the early days. And now I'm with Lenovo for 8 years.
Wow. What a journey. What a journey. And, I mean, shout out to your mom and dad for instilling in you great values, great advice along the way. Shout out to Mr. Lee, your teacher, Dr. Price, your calculus teacher. I mean, we need those those people in our lives, right? Every step of the way, helping us, guiding us. And shout out to Nesby for connecting you with some great people and a great company in Texas Instruments.
I know.
Great, excellent.
Last year I had an opportunity to reunite with Nesby, and it was just full circle for me because it all started there. And so I am very appreciative of that organization, respect the mission, and it works. It worked for me.
Excellent, excellent. I've yet to attend a Nesby conference, I have to say. Would definitely like to. I think, is there, they just had a conference. Was it out in California somewhere?
Yes, we both missed out. Yes, it was last week, actually, in California.
Gotcha. That's what I thought. Well, there's always next year, right? Hopefully I'll be able to get to that one. Excellent.
Well, Lenovo was there. We are a proud sponsor.
Oh, nice.
We had a booth, and our recruiting department was there. We're always looking for great, diverse talent.
Excellent. And we're going to get into that here soon. But tell us, you're the Vice President of Worldwide Function HR and Chief Diversity Officer for Lenovo. So explain to our audience what your role actually entails. What does that mean?
Well, let me just say, first of all, that having a STEM background has served me so well. The ability to problem solve and analyze processes, I've leveraged those core skills and capabilities throughout my career. I've spent most of my time in the business, and now I'm in HR. So Greg, in 2007, Lenovo hired me to manage their diversity and their culture integration. Let me just provide some context on Lenovo. Lenovo was a Chinese company 10 years ago.
Okay.
The company was very successful in China for 20 years. Number one, everyone knows Lenovo if you're in China. So 10 years ago, they acquired a Western-based company, the iconic IBM, the PCD division. And there were a lot of challenges. There were Eastern and Western cross-cultural challenges, clashes. There was a lot of drama. And so what's key here is that this Chinese company said, we want to go global. And to be a global company, we need to bring in different cultures, different experiences, different perspectives that we don't have. And I'll never forget my first day on the job. I flew to Beijing, China, walked into the executive committee meeting, and I thought I'd walked into the United Nations. I had never in my entire career experienced so many different cultures, national cultures at the very top. So very, very diverse. And so from the very beginning, I've worked closely with the executive committee to really develop strategies to ensure that we have a culture that respects and values diversity, where all our diversity can just thrive and contribute to our overall results. And it wasn't easy, Greg, at the beginning. It was very challenging. But over the years, we've established some values, some behaviors called the Lenovo Way. We've worked at it, and it has propelled us to be the number one computer company in the world. And we're continuing to grow and expand. When I joined 8 years ago, we were $3 billion in revenue, and now we're a $39 billion business. So we've grown rapidly. And there's been not just an acquisition of an American company, but we've acquired a German company, Medion, a Japanese company. You know NEC, right?
Yes.
The NEC, NEC was acquired. A Brazilian company, CCE. And so one of our core competencies, and one of the things that it's a part of our business strategy, is the ability to bring in diversity and leverage it as a competitive advantage. And it has helped us win in the marketplace.
Wow. Take note, Silicon Valley. Listen to what she's telling you all. Diversity works. It helps. And I think something that we can take away from what you just said, from the beginning, some things there that you were talking about in the beginning is, you have a STEM background, and that helped. And the fact that you were able to leverage that and not necessarily go into a position where you would actually have to do, hands-on engineering, but yet,
that's right.
That came into play is huge, because there's a lot of people out there who may think that, you have to get into these roles where, you're in front of a computer all day and you're doing all this work with technical work and things like that. And you were able to leverage your degree to do something, in the HR realm that helps with the diversity. So that's great. It's excellent.
Well, Greg, I'm so glad you picked up on that, because that's a message that I have been trying to deliver, and more so recently, to the younger generation, to get that technical background and how it will serve you so well. And it's one of the few, STEM is one of the few areas where if you get an education and get that discipline, you can use it in multiple facets, right? So you talked earlier about, I spent time in sales. I was in product group. Now I'm in HR. I was in supply chain. So you can leverage those skills in your professional life and in your personal life. And at some point I talked to you about living in China and how I use my analytical and process skills to deal with traffic and just living in Beijing, China for 3 years.
Wow. Amazing. So to tell us a little bit about, for those who haven't read your book, how does Lenovo define diversity? And then how does that impact policies, hiring, promotion, or is there more beyond that?
Oh, that's a good question. So we define diversity very broadly. It's really about acknowledging all the elements that make a person unique. So their history, their national culture, thinking style, work experience, expertise. If you think about how we become global, I said we were a Chinese company. A lot of my Chinese colleagues had never even traveled outside of China. And the founder, Liu Chenjie, said, we want to be a global company, but we realized that we only know China. We only know the China market. So to be global and to be successful, we have to bring in Americans. We have to bring in Europeans. We have to bring in Brazilians. And, oh, by the way, we have employees in over 60 countries around the world, and we're about 64,000 employees globally. And this has happened in the past 10 years, by the way. And so there was a recognition early on that we need different thinking styles, different work experiences. And if you so happen to be Brazilian, if you so happen to be African American, if you so happen to be Japanese, okay. But it's really about leveraging those skills, those perspectives, and an expertise to be a global company, and also leveraging those national cultural or those regional differences to better understand our customers. We're global customers. We want to sell to everyone in the world. And so truly your workforce has to reflect that marketplace. So that's how we define diversity. And by the way, the Lenovo Way, the book that I co-authored with Gina Chow, we talk about, we're very, very transparent. We talk about the challenges at the very beginning and then also the successes. And it's very personal. I talk about my personal challenges and what, it was a wake-up call for me because I was very used to looking at diversity from a race and gender perspective, very compliance and check the box. When I joined Lenovo, this was much bigger than that. Not get me wrong, you have to have compliance in the U.S. It's very local, but from a global perspective, at the end of the day, if Eastern and Western cultures, national cultures, if we didn't work together and integrate, we weren't going to be a global company. We weren't going to be very successful. And so we talk about that, and we're very transparent about the human side of the business. And so I think you'll find in the book that it's not just your how-to book, but there's a lot of personal stories. Some of them are very funny that Gina Chow and myself share. And so I hope that the listeners will take the opportunity to read it. But in terms of how does diversity impact our policies, the reality is if diversity is going to work, and this is so important, if anything you take from this conversation, if diversity is going to work, you have to create a culture that really values and respects that diversity. So you can hire diversity all day long. You can play the compliance, the check-the-box game. But when that diversity enters your organization and they can't fully contribute or add value, then you're missing out. You're really, really missing out. And every community, every family, every company has a culture. And when I talk about culture, it's a set of values, it's beliefs and behaviors. And what we've learned is that a stronger culture is very intentional. They're very clear about this is our culture, this is what we believe, this is how we're going to behave, this is how we're going to work together. The weaker cultures, it's developed out of neglect and bad habits. And we've been very intentional about it. And so we look at all of our processes. From the time you interview, we're asking candidates, give me an example of teams that you've worked with that were diverse. How do you deal with diversity? Internally, to be promoted as a leader, you have to demonstrate that you can embrace and lead teams across cultures. That's very important for us because we're very global. And so it's promotion, it's hiring, it's also rewards and recognition. Every year we have the Lenovo Way Awards around the globe. where groups, teams, individuals are recognized for demonstrating the right behaviors. The best way to get an organization to change or to see what you're talking about is to reward and recognize those who do it very well. And so we actually have rewards and recognition and huge prizes, by the way, for those leaders, for those individuals that do it very well.
Wow. You you touched on so many excellent things. I want to start with something you said earlier, acknowledging elements that make a person unique. And what's really important about that is, and this is a story, something that happened to me recently, is I was approached by a publication to talk about diversity, and one of the questions was around, what do you have to change in a culture, or what do you have to change in a workplace or something like that to achieve diversity? And my biggest thing, unfortunately, I wasn't actually able to do the interview, but in thinking about the question, it was more, my thing was, what everything that you said sums up to empathy. You're right. Having an understanding about a person, what makes a person unique, understanding what trials, maybe tribulations a person might have gone through, understanding their uniqueness, their background, all that to me comes from empathy. Having empathy towards that person, having empathy towards their background and things of that nature. And I think that's very, very important when trying to tackle diversity, especially when you're in a business and you have this culture, and that culture has to be empathetic to everybody. So I think that was a great point. Also, if diversity is going to work, you have to create a culture that respects diversity. I think that's very important, a brilliant takeaway from some of the things you said. And another thing, be intentional about diversity. We hear, quite a bit, people think that diversity is just going to happen, and that's not, you have to be intentional about it. You have to put in those processes and procedures if you want to have diversity in your company. So some great insight there. Thank you.
And you also have to recognize, I've grown so much. I mean, I've been in high tech over 25 years, but the last 8 years, I feel like I've truly emerged and grown to be a great global leader. And what did it for me, Greg, was leaving and moving to China. Now, I told you I'm from Port Arthur, population of 50,000. I've been living in Austin for a long time, about 1 million people. I moved to Beijing, China, about 23 million people just in the city, okay? And so when you move to a city, 23 million people, and by the way, English is not the first language, it's the second language. And so talk about moving outside of your comfort zone for myself and for my husband and my boys. But oh my God, what an amazing experience, because what it did is it took me out of what I was used to and made me see things from a very different perspective. So here I am, the Chief Diversity Officer, hired to help bridge East and West gaps and help with integration. And in the first few months, I ran into some challenges. My style was viewed very negatively by my Chinese colleagues. I didn't quite understand that. And what I did was I didn't take the attitude where I am who I am, they need to get over it, and this is the way it is. What I did was I took the time to seek out the feedback to understand what was causing the problem. And there were some simple things. There were some communication things in which you have to realize when you're dealing with other cultures, other races, there are differences. Take the time to listen and understand. The majority of the time, people's intentions are very good. And so that's how Gina and I, my co-author, formed this great relationship. And by the way, Gina Chow is Chinese. I spent time in Beijing, China, she moved to the U.S. and spent time here with her family and her in the U.S. to understand Western ways, and we became co-mentors and helped each other throughout this journey over the past 8 years. But through that process, I just realized that I needed to listen more, and that I had some biases, even as a minority and someone who, touted herself as really getting diversity, and so right, and so. Yeah. It was an eye opener, and it benefited me greatly. So I'm much more patient. I realize now when I travel to different cultures, when I'm dealing with people who are different culturally from me, it's okay maybe to adjust your style just a little bit to connect, to build a relationship. Because as a leader, I have a very global, diverse team. And I need to take people with me. I need them to respect me. I need them to deliver results. But sometimes as a leader, you have to understand the diversity on your team and that they're motivated and they're inspired differently. And you may have to do some things to build relationships, to build trust. You're not losing your core values of who you are. You're just seeking to understand their perspective and their way a little bit differently.
You touched on one of the main tenets of what they call DevOps. I don't know if you've heard of that term before, but DevOps in certain companies, that's actually, it's this kind of collaboration between development people and operations people. Operations people being system analysts, system engineers, systems administrators, and the developers who write the code and things like that. And one of the main things that DevOps solve is this whole collaboration thing, and where you're no longer in these where you're no longer in these silos, and you're working together to achieve a business need, right? And so one of the things that they really touch on is this empathy thing. So what they do is they'll take somebody who is a systems administrator, or take somebody who's a storage engineer or network engineer, and they'll stick them in a totally different team. So you can see how they operate and see some of the challenges that they face day to day, so that you can understand what they go through. So you're not doing this blame game. You're not saying, "Oh, it's your fault. It's your fault." This is this is a team effort. Here are some of the challenges. Now you understand these challenges, like we understand them, and now you can take that back to your team, and now we can begin to collaborate a lot better. And different companies do this in different ways, but I found it interesting that you were talking about how you went to Beijing, China, how you were entered a new culture, and how you had to navigate and change some of the how you interacted and how you communicated and things like that in order to achieve goals. So I thought that was great.
Well, and get rid of my bias, and I'm so glad you brought that point up, because in Lenovo we've done a lot of workshops or interventions, if you will, where teams who were not working well together, we put them in the room, and what we did was we said, okay, let's understand the why behind the behavior. I learned so much about my Chinese colleagues. At first, I felt as though, why are they holding back? Why aren't they sharing information with me? And then Gina shared with me, you have to understand, when I was a little girl, since grade school, I was taught to be humble and never be the first one to raise my hand in class. Okay? And it's about collectivism in China. And so when I'm in meetings, even today, in my, and she's much older, she said that discipline and what I was taught early on, it sticks with you. So it's not that I don't want to be a team player. It's just the dynamics in the room, I'm trying to be humble. I'm trying to give you an opportunity or others opportunity and not steal the show. Well, as Westerners, I'm like, being a woman, being an African American and an engineer, you have to understand that to get to where I am, I had to be aggressive. I had to have a voice and a perspective. It's about individualism in America, and that's how you rise to the top. It's very different. Their way is not necessarily wrong, nor our way. It's just different. So now that we understand that, it makes it better, right? So when you get with your team, you understand. And so my team, when we meet, and it's very diverse, I have Europeans, I have Americans, I have folks from South America and China. I know my Chinese leaders will never be the first to speak up. Okay? So what I do is in meetings, I will tell my Western colleagues or others, okay, I've heard from you, now let me hear from Zhang Yan. And then I give her permission to talk. So as a leader, I recognize that dynamic and those differences, but at the end of the day, I want to hear from all of my people. I want that diversity and that perspective. I understand where she's coming from and why she'll never speak up. And, oh, by the way, Westerners won't even give the Asian colleagues a chance to speak up because it's just in our DNA to be the first one, right? So you just have to understand that dynamic. And as a leader, make sure you get in the best and the ideas and the perspectives from all your people.
Amazing. So, how do you define the value of diversity down the chain? So we kind of assume executives and directors, they've read the business literature about the value of diversity. Do you still get any pushback, and how do you overcome that?
Well, first of all, you have to have a framework and implement it. And we had one. We started this framework 8 years ago, and it was, one, be clear about your core values. Make everyone aware. Where you can make people aware of your beliefs and behaviors. How many times you walk into companies and they have, oh, we believe in this, we value this, and it's just words on paper. Well, the next step is to make sure you embed it in your culture. And so every process has to be tweaked and modified, the way you assess people on an annual basis. So it's not just, Greg, this is what you delivered. You know, you did X amount of podcasts or shows for your organization, but it's also about how you did it. And that's where the Lenovo way comes in. So we measure on the what and the how and how you behave. How did you teamwork? How did you collaborate and work with others to drive those results? That's very important. The third thing, which is critical, it has to be leader-led. It has to start with the chairman and the CEO of the company. And that has been the situation at Lenovo from day one. And they have led the way. It hasn't been HR responsibility. It hasn't been Yolanda Conyers, the Chief Diversity Officer, responsibility. It's the business leader's responsibilities, the owner and the chairman of the company, to get on stage and say, we believe in this, and this is a competitive advantage, and we're going to be good at this. And we traveled around the world, and we met with all the executives and talked about the Lenovo way. We talked about the strategy, how it goes hand in hand, and then we held each leader accountable to go out to their respective organizations and cascade it down all the way down to entry-level positions. So, Greg, if you visited Lenovo, if I took you to the factory lines, if I took you to our sales reps, everyone knows the Lenovo way. They know how they're measured against it. They know how it's important to the company. And so you have to start at the top, and it has to be cascaded down. And the people at the bottom has to see that the people at the top believe in it, and that they're walking the talk. It makes it very, very difficult. It makes it very difficult if the leaders are not modeling the behavior and showing the respect for diversity, right?
Yeah. That's powerful. And once again, I will say this: Silicon Valley, anybody, any company, anywhere, you should be listening to this podcast. You should be listening to Yolanda right now, because she is telling you right now where this starts at, where diversity in your company starts at. It has to be seen at the top, at the leaders, and it has to cascade down to everyone. And the people at the underneath them have to see that coming from leadership. That's important. It's important because, you know, in a lot of places, leaders they are the ones that start to dictate culture in your company. I've seen it firsthand. how this affects companies. And people have to see this from their leaders. They have to believe that their leaders believe that. So very, very powerful.
I'm glad you're reemphasizing that. Our leader did so much. We've done so much from the very beginning to demonstrate that we're not a Chinese company, but we're a global company. Right after the acquisition of IBM PCD 10 years ago, the owner of the company said, we're going to declare English as the global language. This is the standard globally, so we're going to speak English. So can you imagine all my Chinese leaders, executives, who been with the company, many of them for years, been successful, the company's number one, overnight they're told, English is the standard, you need to learn English. So that's one thing. Just talk about taking you out of your comfort zone. And they did it, right? Yeah. And then there was a lot of international assignments, moving some of our Eastern colleagues to the U.S. I moved to China. The company supported and made that investment. It was about making sure you get exposure to each other's cultures, to learn and understand and respect the differences to bridge the gap. But we also created multiple headquarters. So what do most American companies do? They are American, they go global, and the headquarters are in the U.S., and all the practices, the values and beliefs are exported, and everyone else around the globe is expected to do it the way headquarters do it. We said, no, we're going to create multiple headquarters, and we did that. And as we grow, we're going to make sure that we're bringing in different perspectives from all the regions and that we're collaborative, and we're going to pick the best practice that's going to work and support the overall strategy for the company. We even had our CEO at the time give up his title and say, I'm not going to be CEO anymore, and hired an American leader to be the CEO for the first few years of the evolution of Lenovo. So, it's those type of bold moves to when I was living in China. I have to share this story with you, Greg. In China.
No problem.
And I'm going to talk about toilets, and I'm not trying to be gross, but in China, the toilets are, round holes, ceramic tile on the floor, right? And so you squat to use the restroom. It's not like our toilets we have in the Western world. Well,
real quick, not to cut you off, but that's actually, I've read about this, and that's actually, they say, is a more natural way of using the restroom than what we do, which is kind of restrict ourselves, so to speak, physically. That's funny.
Where in their culture, they don't view that as the way we do it, very hygienic, right? But, living there, I got used to it. But what's phenomenal is that our offices in Beijing and across China, we made a decision, or they made a decision early on, to change out some of the toilets and include Western-style toilets. So, I talked about some of the big changes, like changing, declaring English is going to be the standard language globally. Multiple headquarters. But the little things like when Westerners travel now to the offices in Beijing, we have Western-style toilets. Or we have coffee versus traditionally what you do is drink tea at business meetings in China. But now we have across the campuses these Starbucks-like setups. Again, embracing that we are global. We're not just a Chinese company. We're global, and so we need to respect those differences and integrate that in our environment. It's huge.
Wow. And I keep going back to the word empathy, and I think you all have hit it right on the head. It sounds like you all are practicing that to its fullest extent. It sounds like a great company to work for.
It's been a lot of fun.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say it's been It's been great, and what's
Mm-hmm.
very rewarding for me is as the Chief Diversity Officer, I'm not constantly have to develop a business case every year for why I need budget. They get it. It's diversity is part of our business strategy, and we believe that when you bring diverse and talented people together with a shared purpose or goal or strategy, that you can do amazing things. And that's why we're number one in the world now in technology. And now we're expanding into smartphones and into enterprise and cloud services business, as well as
Right.
tablets. I don't know if you're aware, but in October we acquired Motorola as well as
Oh, wow.
IBM server division. And so our vision 5 years from now is to be the number one company in technology around the world.
Wow. And I like what you just said about diversity being part of your business strategy. Let me ask you this, is that some advice that you would give to other leading tech companies out there, or companies period, not even just tech companies? Would you say that, hey, if you're not doing that, if that's not part of your business strategy, you need to be doing it?
I agree, especially if you want to be a global company. Or let's say you're just an American company, you're not global. And if you want Americans to appreciate your products, customers to buy your products in the U.S., you have to understand and respect that diversity in the U.S. And so in the Lenovo way, what we provide, it can work in schools, it can work in governments, it can work in private sectors, and it's the recipe. And like I said, we're very transparent about what didn't work. There's a lot of examples, and it also talks about how humans reacted to it, which I think is very important. So you see the human side of it, and that's what makes this book very different. And I'm very excited that we have an English version now, and by the end of this year, we'll have a version in Mandarin Chinese. We also have a Russian publisher just agreed to publish it in Russian and in Indonesia. And so it's taken hold globally because it's principles and practices and examples that people can relate to. And so when you purchase the book, and by the way, it's on Amazon, it's in Barnes and Noble, and it's in most of all the airports as well if you travel. There are a lot of practical, tips and advices that I think anyone can gain from.
Excellent. And I personally nominate that book. Sounds like a great book for required reading, really. It sounds like it gives a lot of great insights that, given the atmosphere of tech right now, and I think that it's something that a lot of people could benefit from, especially a lot of the higher ups. So excellent. So what advice? We talked about bigger companies, but what advice would you give to like a new company that would like to grow into a diverse company as part of their path, as opposed to like having to start diversity initiatives later when they look up and realize they have a problem? What advice would you give them?
That's a good question. I would say every company is unique. So at the very beginning, like I said, 10 years ago, we knew we wanted to be a global company. We understood our customers. So I think every company has to understand who they want to sell their products and services to. And you better believe that you need to make sure that within your company you have that in the fabric, right? You have that perspective so that you can develop and produce results that your customers will appreciate. I also believe that, it has to start at the top. The leaders have to believe that, okay, these are my customers, and so given that, I need to make sure internally that my workforce reflects the marketplace. But I have to tell you, Greg, I don't want to share too much because I really want my listeners to read the book.
Yeah.
There's a lot of information. I mean, really. I did an interview recently, and they said, wow, you shared your secret sauce. I mean, you just put it all out there. And I said, here's the reality.
Mm-hmm.
It's easy said than done. And what I want listeners to realize is that it is hard work. And it's not a sprint, it's a journey. So the first 5 years, it took 5 years for us to really try to really get this to where it started to work for us. So if leaders or people listening to this call believe that, oh, okay, I'm just going to invest 1 year on diversity and culture and it's going to be all fixed, you're wrong. Even today, and I mentioned we've done 8 mergers. I don't know if I mentioned this, but we've done 8 mergers and acquisitions in 10 years.
Uh-huh.
And the most recent acquisitions, we recognize that we brought in new experience and expertise from Motorola and IBM 86. And it wasn't just about buying the bricks and mortar. It was about that human capital. And so early on, we surveyed those employees and said, tell us about your culture. We want to understand. And we really worked to understand their perspective and weave it in. It's not necessarily you're going to come in and do it the Lenovo way. Obviously, we acquired them because they're bringing something that we need in the organization. So you have to be open, you have to be flexible, and the culture is constantly, you have to tweak it because, quite honestly, 10 years ago, we were focused on being number one in PCs. And as you know, now smartphones and apps and software is dominating the tech industry. Mm-hmm. So we've had to evolve and keep up with that. And so now we're focused on how do we be a more customer-centric organization? How do we make sure we're more Internet savvy? And so it's ongoing work to ensure your culture is right and relevant for what's happening at a point in time so that you can be competitive.
Excellent. That's excellent advice. We talked a lot about, about leadership and about it being kind of a cascading effect when it comes to diversity. But what's, and this comes from a question from Ayori. She's listening in. Hey, Ayori. But this is a question coming in from Twitter. She's asking, what's the number one thing employees need to ask of their leaders to support diversity?
I think we have as an employee, an obligation to help your manager and your leader understand who you are and what you bring to the table.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one. And I think as an employee, by doing that, you're becoming a change agent. And so a change agent is someone who is skillfully helping to educate others to know what they and others bring to the table. And I think it's also important to connect with human resources and have human resources help to facilitate the dialogue and the discussion. So if you feel like you have a manager who doesn't get it, then reach out to HR, and hopefully you have an HR organization that is trustworthy and will allow you to have that conversation. And HR should play the role. So those who are in HR, you should constantly be seeking input and advice from your employees at all levels. We have what is called Lenovo Listens that we launch on a regular basis, and it's an opportunity for employees at all levels to tell us how they're experiencing the culture. If you don't have that, you need to integrate that into your environment, because that's good objective feedback to give to leadership team to tell them what needs to change or to tell them what's working.
Excellent. And this actually segues into my next question, because you do have a background, a bachelor's in computer science. Tell us tell us how you got involved in the business side, the HR side, the diversity side of technology. How did you transition into
that? Greg, since I was a little girl, I've had a passion for bringing diverse teams together. And it was inspired, as I said, by my father, who traveled around the world, and he told me to basically never be afraid or embrace the unfamiliar, travel around the world, take risk. And so I grew up in an all African-American neighborhood, and then in middle school, I was bused and integrated into a predominantly white school. And I learned how to navigate within my neighborhood and how to work and projects in a predominantly white school, and make it work for me. And so, which is another point where I think most minorities are really at an advantage point in terms of their ability to maneuver in and out of different cultures, as I talked about earlier, because most of us have experienced that. So leverage that as a strength, right? When you work in corporations where you may be the only one, but you know how to maneuver and how to work that. And so the opportunity to be the Chief Diversity Officer for Lenovo, I said yes. And I've spent most of my career in the business, but to be able to do this and champion this topic for the number one computer company in the world, and hopefully in a few years the number one technology company in the world, I feel like I'm making a difference. And I talked about earlier how my mother taught me to give back and to help others. Strangely enough, I feel like I'm doing that in corporate. I'm very active in my church and I participate in my community, but I think my role and what I have been succumbed to do, or what I should be doing, is what I'm doing now in corporations and in Lenovo right now, to make sure that diversity is working and thriving. Everyone has a voice, feel valued and appreciated on a day-to-day basis. And so that's why I'm in HR doing this work, and then I also get to leverage my STEM background, because in HR, you're problem solving, you're using analytical skills, I'm constantly analyzing our processes. What do we need to do to make sure we're more efficient, that we're developing talent and rewarding and recognizing? And so again, that STEM background, it carries you in any function, in any area in your professional career.
Excellent. And it's funny that you kind of mentioned how you come from a all black school, black neighborhood, you kind of integrated. I had sort of a similar path, and it really, to me, it really, and I keep using this word over and over again, I know, but it's so true. I really was able to be more empathetic when it came to a different environment, a different culture, how people interact with each other, how people communicate with each other. And one of the biggest things that I learned, despite differences, when you really whittle down, take off some of the layers, you really see people are more similar than they are different.
You're so right.
One of the biggest things that I've learned over the years is that one thing right there. And it's, I come from grew up in an all black neighborhood, moved to a predominantly white neighborhood. And when I was probably around 12, 13, and found some friends, who lived down the street, and just interacting with their family, there were some things that were different, but when it all boiled down to it, I really just seen how similar their lives were to mine, how their parents interacted with them was very similar to how my parents interacted with me. And it was just, it's I look at that, and then I look at some of my friends who I wouldn't say left behind, but who I left behind, in these other neighborhoods, and I just kind of wish, I wish you could just see this and just see it for what it really is. and not make all these assumptions and think that you're
so
different.
Good.
You know, we're so similar in so many ways, and yeah, I thought that was pretty powerful.
Greg, that is so good, because one of the things that really helped us integrate and do so well in Beijing, China, when we were living there, is that as I worked with my employees and I built relationships. So you have to step out and build the relationships. What I learned at the end of the day, my Chinese colleagues, they're hardworking like we are. They value education, and they value family.
Yes.
We all have that in common, right?
Yep.
And that was so prevalent when you get out of the office and you talk about differences. And so in closing, my calling to the audience and the listeners is get out of your comfort zone. Get to know people who are different from you. Not only will you're going to be amazed that there are a lot of similarities, but it'll just broaden your perspective on life. It'll help you make better business decisions and personal decisions, and it'll allow you to be less judgmental.
Yeah. I definitely agree, especially with that last statement there. Before we get out of here, what's next for you?
Well, what's next for me? Let me talk short. Yeah, so we.
Okay.
The reality is, we did our first book, Gina and I, and it's doing very well. This year we'll be launching it globally. We'll be traveling to Russia, which I've never been to Russia. I've traveled many places around the world, but to go to Russia and to have my content accepted by a Russian audience is just amazing. It's such a blessing. So this year is just promoting more globally, but we have received a lot of requests to do another book and go deeper on personal. And I have to tell you, I have a lot of personal stories. Like I said, I've been in high tech for over 25 years. There's been ups and downs that I want to share as a woman, as a global leader, as a mother. And so I want to be able to do that, and my co-author as well. And so we do have plans to work together and develop another book and provide the world with another Eastern and Western perspective. And STEM is huge for me. During the month of March, it was Women's History Month. On Twitter, I spent a lot of time talking about STEM and really encouraging young girls to pursue a career. I'm doing more talks about it. I've been heads down for the past 25 years, just working really, really hard. I was inspired 2 years ago to share my story and inspire others. And so that's my calling, and that's what's next for me, to share my story, the good and the bad, so that others can benefit from it, create a legacy for the Conyers family. And if you want to stay connected with me, I'm on Twitter at YolandaLConyers.com, and I also have a website called www.thelenovoway.com, and I would love to engage with you further. And Greg, thank you. This was great. I enjoyed the conversation. This is fabulous what you're doing.
Pleasure.
Keep up the great work.
Thank you. And for those who are listening, go out and purchase the book. I will definitely be posting that in the show notes. Yolanda, thanks a lot for taking time out of your evening and joining us. Definitely a great pleasure, and best in the future.
Thank you, Greg. Take care.
Take care.
Goodbye.
Bye. And that's it for this episode of the Blacks in Technology Bit Tech Talk. What a great podcast, right? Yolanda was incredible. She gave us some incredible information, and I definitely want to thank her again for joining us. This was inspirational, and I'm speechless. She was great. So thanks to all our listeners, everybody out there who listened in tonight. Thanks to our guest again, Yolanda Conyers. If you like what you heard tonight, you want to let us know, If you have any suggestions or comment, email them to us at contactus@blacksintechnology.net. Join us 2 weeks from now, April 16th, for another exciting Bit Tech Talk podcast with guest Sean Morrison. This is a do-over. We had some technical difficulties. This was actually episode 68, and we had some technical difficulties, and so we have to redo it. So we gave it some time so it could be fresh and everything like that. So Sean is going to be joining us in 2 weeks. He's the CEO and founder of Collective Mobile, and that's a company that helps other businesses and startups with mobile development and strategy. So join us April 16th, 9 p.m., same time, same channel. And remember, tech yourself before you wreck yourself. Take care and have a good night.
Blacks in Technology.
Blacks in technology. Blacks in technology. Blacks in technology. Blacks in technology. Blacks in technology.